Hey everyone, this is Paul, and in this video I want to talk about the Leibnizian Cosmological Argument. I really wanted to call this the Leibnizian Contingency Argument, but it's typically called the Cosmological Argument, so I'll use the correct term, but I don't know, it's more of a contingency type argument in my opinion than a cosmological argument. So let's talk about this. It basically goes like this. This is my version of the argument. I like putting it this way. I think it's a little bit more clear. You might see it worded differently in other areas, but it goes like this. Premise 1, everything that exists has an explanation of its existence, either in the necessity of its own nature or in some external cause. And basically, the analogy that Leibniz gives in support of this is imagine a set of geometry books. You have a book. Well, somebody else had to write the book that wrote that book. So that book was writing that book. And then that book was writing that book. And you go back and back and back. And eventually you get to some book that had to have been the first one in the series. You can't just have an infinite series that never has some necessary starting point. And basically what Leibniz is saying with this is something either has to be necessary, this is very interesting, very similar to Aristotle's idea of a first cause or a first mover, Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. But this is basically saying, look, it either needs to be necessary by its sort of nature, or it has some external cause that caused it. Premise 2, if the universe has an explanation of its existence, that explanation is God, because we're taking God to be basically the prime mover, the first mover by definition. Premise 3, the universe exists, so therefore the universe must either have an explanation of its existence in the necessity of its own nature or in some sort of external cause. So basically the conclusion is therefore the universe must have an explanation for its existence. This is based on Leibniz's principle of sufficient reason, so nothing happens for no reason, everything needs a reason, and this reason either needs to be by its nature or for some other contingent reason that you can eventually trace back to the necessary reason. And notice here, this is very similar to arguments from induction or proofs by induction in mathematics. You have your base case and then you have your inductive case. Basically, the inductive case gets you from n to n plus 1, but you need some base case to start the whole series off, going on and on and on. N implies n plus 1, but you need to show that it applies for some first principle that kicks off the whole thing in order to apply it for some arbitrary value. And that's the idea. God is the kicker offer of the sequence, or the kicker offer of the whole game of the universe, so to speak. Then we get to premise 4, which is the explanation for the universe is not in the necessity of its own nature. Now, I think this is going to be the one that's the most difficult to defend, because what the theist is going to see is that somebody's going to say, well, why can't the universe be its own, basically be the thing that is necessary by its own nature? And the response that Leibniz and that other people use to defend premise 4 is basically saying there's nothing about the universe that suggests it has any specific necessity. I mean, we can imagine the universe not existing. I mean, because of the anthropic principle, we can't be here to imagine a non-universe, but we can imagine that something caused the universe. There's nothing necessarily about this universe that suggests its necessity versus some other universe with some other arrangement of particles or some other initial starting conditions or something like that. So you would defend premise 4 by basically saying, look, the universe is not its own. There's nothing necessary about it. It doesn't just happen for no reason. You need to refer to something that is necessary by its own nature, and then you come to the conclusion, therefore the explanation for the existence of the universe is God, because the universe doesn't just exist. There's nothing about the universe that is necessarily existence-ness about it. So that's the Leibnizian cosmological argument. Thanks for watching. You can debate in the comments if you think this is a good argument, especially on that premise 4 there. But yeah, thanks for watching.